There was another topic that you wanted to talk about, which is sort of related to this, I guess. And it's
Hmm.
why are there so few likable characters in classical literature?
Yeah, I feel like I should give a little bit more context to this, right? This is kind of out of the blue. What prompted me to think about this was a couple. I think there were a couple threads. One thread is that just for a while, I've been wanting to just do more reading of classic literature, just to maybe revisit some things. I guess it's kind of like a bucket list type of
Like what books?
activity. Just I don't know. I feel like maybe there are some books where I want to read them before I die, maybe just to see what all the hype is about.
Like what?
Um, some let's say like Crime and Punishment.
You haven't read that? It's
No,
terrible.
there you go.
Well, don't
But
trust me. You should still read it for yourself.
right, are you saying me not reading it is terrible or the book is terrible?
The book is terrible.
Okay.
It's droning
Um,
on and on.
I saw this video by I have no idea, man. I have no idea how to pronounce this guy's name. He's a philosopher.
Yeah?
His first name is spelled Alain.
Okay.
I know you must know this guy.
Elaine bought at the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea how to pronounce his name. But he has a very short, it's like a maybe 1 minute, 1.5 minute
Mm-hmm.
YouTube video where he talks about the benefits of reading, I guess classic literature and potentially actually a life-changing video just because it gave me a whole different, reason or perspective on why to read. And his basic idea is that when you read some of these, classic books, it gives you a different perspective on life. In other words, like some of these authors are very good at, they all see life differently, right? And when you read what they, when you read their books, you're kind of getting a glimpse of how they see the world. And I think
Mm-hmm.
what's useful about that is then, well, what he explicitly says in that video is that then you can try to take that perspective and use it for yourself. So the next time, you're at a family dinner or whatever, you try to see things the way,
Huh.
insert famous author here
Yeah.
would see them and experience things the way they would experience them. And I think that's very valuable because it can just give you a better, appreciation of life, right? Is really the ultimate goal. So that was kind of like one thread. And the other thread I think is that I've been, watching these Chinese dramas recently, and I really like them. And I was thinking to myself, what I found so enjoyable about these dramas. It's funny, these dramas are, I guess they're pretty obscure in the West, but you know, perhaps to Asians, they wouldn't be, it's much more famous in Asia. I was thinking we could even do like a little contest or
What? I don't want to
just like,
watch any of these if it involves
oh
that.
no, oh not you, but like,
Oh,
I could describe some of these, and then if somebody can guess, if all among all five of our listeners,
we have
if
more
one
than
of them
that.
if one of them guesses, maybe what dramas
Oh,
I'm talking about, I could, I'll give them like,
$1 million.
yeah,
No,
maybe
not that
like, let's
much.
say like, I don't know, $50 of
Yeah.
Bitcoin or something. I don't know. I would do that. But I was just thinking about like what I found so, yeah, enjoyable about these dramas. And one of the main things is that they all have very likable characters,
Yeah.
and these dramas are like, it's like a cross between, I would say it's like, a bit of martial arts, a bit of Romeo and Juliet, because there's typically some kind of forbidden love aspect. And there's usually like a harem aspect to it as well,
Hmm.
which makes it more interesting for guys, I guess. But yeah, they all have very likable characters in where you want to see the characters get together basically. And I was thinking like, why is it that in classical literature there's just so few like first of all, romance seems to be an underrepresented genre in classic literature. I don't know if you obviously my knowledge of classic literature is very shallow. I don't know
Yes.
if you
No, it
think
is. I
romance
don't
is
think there's many romance books in classical. Yeah, there's very few.
why do you think that is too? Just because romance does seem to
Well,
be
I have an
pretty
answer for this. I mean, so why are
yeah
there not many likable characters?
yeah.
Well, when you say classical literatures, can you give me some examples of what you're thinking of?
Let's think about pretty much any Hemingway book. Let's say
Any Hemingway? Well, there's quote unquote romance, there's relationships.
are
I
there?
haven't read all Hemingway. Read Old Man in the Sea, which has no romance, of course.
Oh, I've actually done a little bit of Google searching on this, and I did find a list of classic literature, romances, and one of them actually was Great Gatsby
Yeah,
was on that
it
list.
exists, yeah.
But I don't
But it's not
even
very romantic.
exactly, and it
Yeah.
has very flawed characters, right? I don't remember it that well to be honest, but they
Well, I
weren't
do have an
characters
answer
that
for this. I do have an
yeah,
answer.
yeah. They weren't characters that you would cheer for, really.
No, no.
Yeah.
No, your observation's correct. I would say it's correct. I do have an answer for this. It's just Western tradition of literature sort of it comes down from religious tradition because for a long time those were the only people that could read or write, right? It's people who are religious. And they wrote things not for entertainment and not for you to identify with characters. They wrote things to teach you things. Like so they would almost always have flawed characters going through some sort of trial or something. And that sort of tradition is just I think
Okay.
been handed down. The tradition of Western literature is still based on religion or has been for a long time. It's not about entertaining people and it's not about getting eyeballs. It's not about selling anything. So you'll have flawed characters because the main goal is to teach some sort of lesson, some moral lesson. Whereas in anime or in these Chinese dramas,
Or even
the
just
goal is
popular
to
fiction,
sell.
I would say, right?
Or yeah, or in popular fiction today, the goal is to sell. So it makes sense to have a character that's likable. You didn't
Hmm.
need likable characters back then. That wasn't really a priority. You needed
But
useful characters.
but I feel like even if your goal is to teach something or to proselytize or something, I mean, you would be better off by engaging your audience rather than, I don't know, turning them away, right?
Well, maybe they didn't think they were turning them away. They just thought that okay, these are the type of characters that exist. They didn't need to be likable. Maybe their definition of likable was different. You have to remember this is when you're talking about classic literature, you're talking about more than 100 years ago, right? Even
Hmm.
Hemingway, I haven't read them. I think I've only read like three Hemingway books. But
Hmm.
The Sun Also Rises is 1929. It's almost 100 years ago.
Hmm.
So the standards were just quite different. Great Gatsby, was that written in the 20s? Yeah, that's almost 100 years ago.
I'm trying to think. Can you think of any classic literature that had likable characters, in your opinion?
No, because they just weren't meant to be likable. They were meant to
What?
be emblematic of whatever struggle or whatever lesson was trying to be. No, I can't. Honestly, I really can't. There's no Indiana Jones, there's
It's
no
so it's
James
so yeah.
Bond.
It's so weird because doesn't it seem I don't know. It seems obvious to me that these aren't mutually exclusive goals.
Maybe they are though. Maybe at the time they just felt that if we created a character that was so likable, it would just almost be like, like a like we make fun of Mary Sue's today. Like, oh, your character's just so perfect and this just doesn't
Hmm.
feel real, doesn't feel believable when you make a
Hmm.
Mary Sue. Maybe they felt like characters that were likable were Mary Sue's. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what their headspace was at the time,
So
but
I don't know how much you remember about Romeo and Juliet, but was that a play, I guess, where you are rooting for them to succeed?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that you were rooting for them to. Yeah, I guess you were,
Hmm.
right? I guess the audience was, or was meant to be.
Hmm.
Hmm. I think this need for likability is very modern. I think that's what it is. It's just such a modern thing.
Hmm.
I've often felt that it's odd to like when people have often said, "Well, I didn't connect with the story because there's nobody likable in it." I've I've often felt that that was a weird criticism.
Hmm.
Like I just said, well, why do you need to like somebody in this?
What about, okay,
Can it not be a good work regardless of that? I don't understand.
right. Of course it can. I'm wondering, like 1984. I don't, I don't remember that book very well at all.
Hmm.
But do you remember? I remember liking it very much when I read it.
But was the
Um,
character likable? No.
yeah, that was my
It wasn't
question.
a hero, you know?
Right.
It wasn't a, you know, daring hero or anything like that. It's just
You know
a
what's fun? Even the prototypical quote unquote hero characters though, where they were not necessarily likable, right? I don't know. I, uh, I'm trying to think of what were some like what are some famous quote unquote heroic characters? Maybe they're
Superman
from, no from like I don't know,
from
maybe
literature.
yeah, Greek literature or something.
Were any of them likable? I don't know.
So yeah, even I feel like
Odysseus?
yeah, I feel like even the heroes were not necessarily
No.
likable, right? They were just like moral exemplars.
Right.
But for some, yeah,
They were examples of what you should be.
yeah,
And that's just a different value set than what we have today. I think it more highlights just the different values we place on things today as opposed to even just 100 years ago.
it actually, the more I think about this, and this is really just kind of rambly rant or just yeah, rambling. It really, it gets me thinking about what does make a character likable, right?
I think if they have something in
And how,
common with you, like if they act like you or have the same interests.
mhm. And yeah, and also how does the author create this kind of likability, I guess, right? Is yeah, I think it in some cases it's a lot easier. Like in anime, for example, I think it's easy, at least I'll just speak for myself, to like things which are beautiful in some way,
Yes, yes.
right?
Right,
So in anime, it's really easy because all the characters are by default they are very attractive, right?
right.
Not only physically, but the voice acting, usually the personalities. They're all I would say I would characterize them as attractive. So that kind of yeah, it's a big head start towards creating the likable or likability.
I just think it's a difference of values between now and even 100 years ago. It wasn't important to them.
Hmm.
I know that sounds so weird, but it just was not important to them. You know, it didn't have to sell a person's likability. We're just talking about different values.
Yeah. If that's the case, I think that's really really interesting to keep in the back of my mind, as I'm reading some of this stuff.
It
Um,
means you probably will not enjoy these books, though.
probably.
Yeah, you won't. You won't.